Did you notice that a certain Princeharry flew from LA all the way to Shanghai to apparently promote greener travel?
In hot air balloon, or did he fly in an aeroplane?
I think it was a jet, don't you, Tom?
Right, okay, well...
Picture this. Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, steps up to the podium, ready to deliver what he believes will be a game-changing speech on sustainable travel and global empathy. But within minutes, the room begins to empty. Attendees whirled. Leaders, diplomats, and CEOs start slipping out of their seats, their footsteps echoing in the cavernous hall as Harry presses on, his voice growing tighter with each passing second. By the 10-minute mark, dozens of chairs are vacant, a stark visual of rejection. Harry's face, caught on a summit livestream, betrays his fury. His jaw clenches, his eyes dart toward the exiting crowd, and a flush of rage creeps up his neck. This wasn't just a speech gone wrong. It was a public humiliation on an international stage, a moment that left the once adored prince enraged and exposed as a man the world no longer wants to hear.
Challenges will undoubtedly rise. But if there's one thing that I've learned in my life, it's that meaningful change never comes easily.
The Envision 2025 summit was billed as Harry's big moment to prove he's more than a royal exile with a Netflix-contracted chance to cement his place as a global thought leader. Instead, it became a masterclass in irrelevance, a scene so cringe-worthy that even the most seasoned summit attendees couldn't hide their second-hand embarrassment. As Harry spoke about climate trauma and redefining masculinity, the audience's disinterest was palpable. It started subtly, whispers in the back rows, a few delegates quietly gathering their bags. But by the halfway mark, it was a full-blown exodus. Over 50 attendees, including high-ranking Chinese officials and European tech executives, walked out before Harry could even finish, leaving rows of empty seats in their wake.
Right, now the Times is quite usefully. Now, it's not known what flight Harry did take to China, and Travelist, the company that he's involved with, has declined to share their estimates, with this newspaper anyway. But on average, a passenger travelling first class on a return flight from LA to Shanghai produces the equivalent of 6,311.32 kilos.
One delegate, quoted anonymously by the South China Morning Post, summed it up brutally: "This isn't a therapy session. We came for solutions, not sermons, for a man who once commanded global respect for his military service and humanitarian work. This was a fall so stark, so public, it's hard to overstate its impact. The gravity of this moment hits like a freight train." Prince Harry, once the charismatic royal who walked beside veterans and spoke with raw honesty about mental health, now stands on a world stage delivering a speech so out of touch, so irrelevant, that it drives his audience to literally walk away. His address, meant to inspire action on sustainable travel, was a jumble of buzzwords: global healing, digital equity, emotional resilience, with no data, no policy proposals, and no connection to the summit's focus on innovation and infrastructure. It was the kind of speech you'd expect from a lifestyle influencer at a wellness retreat.
Also, I wonder whether he's a bit of a useful idiot as well, going off to China to sort of, I don't know, he's lending his support, isn't he, really, for the way that they're doing things, presumably.
And
at least it looks like that.
I just wish we were doing what China is doing when it comes to energy.
A bit of everything.
They have just this all... They are producing more solar power. By 2030, they will be producing more solar power.
Not a keynote speaker at a high-level economic forum. As the walkouts continued, Harry seemed either oblivious or unwilling to adapt, his voice growing more strained as the room emptied. A European diplomat later told Reuters, "It felt like he was speaking to himself. The rest of us were just." Props on his personal journey. The image of those empty chairs, stark against the backdrop of Harry's faltering speech, became a symbol of his fading relevance, a prince left behind by a world that's moved on. Let's break down how this catastrophe unfolded. The Envision 2025 summit, held in Shanghai, was a series of fair-think discussions on AI, clean energy, and China's 5-year tech strategy, not self-help platitudes. Other speakers, like a Japanese tech CEO presenting a new AI-driven energy, greed, or an African diplomat outlining trade initiatives, received engaged applause and lively Q&A sessions. Harry, on the other hand, was painfully out of place. His speech veered into topics that had no relevance to the summit's goals, rambling about climate trauma and compassionate leadership while completely ignoring regional priorities, like the Belt and Road Initiative or global trade alliances. A Chinese state media columnist didn't hold back, writing, "Princeharry brought palace drama to a summit about planetary progress." He misread the room entirely, another attendee. Quipped to the Financial Times, "It was like listening to a podcast episode titled Montecito Musings. I expected ideas, not feelings." The walkouts weren't random, they were a coordinated signal of discomfort with Harry's Western-centric, self-indulgent tone. The irony of Harry's appearance only sharpens the sting. Here's a prince who flew first class from LA to Shanghai. Trip that, according to the Times, produces an average of 6,311 kilos of carbon emissions per passenger to preach about greener travel. The hypocrisy wasn't lost on the audience, many of whom were already skeptical of his credentials. Chinese media, known for its unsparing critiques, tore into Harry with surgical precision. The Global Times called his speech tone deaf and patronizing, while Weibo users flooded comment sections with memes. Did he think we'd clap for his carbon footprint? Another outlet remarked, Harry arrived with a royal title but left with nothing else. In a culture that values merit and preparation, he was an empty suit. This wasn't the British tabloids or American gossip rags, these were foreign observers, untainted by the Sussex drama, delivering cold, hard truths about a man clearly out of his depth. The tension escalates when you zoom out to the broader context of Harry's crumbling post-royal career. Just weeks before the summit, his phone hacking lawsuit against the publisher of The Sun was dismissed in London, with the judge calling his claims uncredible. Meanwhile, his Netflix deal is reportedly on life support amid Hollywood strikes. And the Spotify podcast he and Meghan launched in 2020 was cancelled after one season, costing them a $6 million contract. These aren't just setbacks, they're nails in the coffin of the Sussex brand, a brand that promised bold independence but now feels like a series of misfires. At Envision 2025, Harry's lack of substance only deepened the damage, proving what critics have long suspected: without the royal machine behind him, he's struggling to find a role that fits. A German outlet, Der Spiegel, put it bluntly, Prince Harry proves celebrity is not diplomacy. Even in the US, CNN, usually a softer voice on the Sussexes, called the speech misaligned with the summit's intent. The global consensus was clear: Harry's star is fading, and fast. The climax of this disaster comes with the deafening silence that followed, both in the room and beyond. Chinese officials, known for their diplomatic courtesy, offered no endorsement, no praise, not even a post-summit photo op. Senior party officials didn't just walk out, they stayed away from Harry entirely, a diplomatic slap that spoke louder than words. Back in the UK, the royal family's response was equally telling. Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace issued no statements, no tepid words of support, nothing. A royal commentator, Richard Fitzwilliams, told GB News the firm knows brand management, and this was a train wreck they wanted no part of. The silence extended to the summit organizers, who quietly demoted Harry's name on the event website, moving it below a junior panel on blockchain integration. Not a single organizer praised his appearance, no press releases, no social media clips, just a void. In diplomacy, silence is often the loudest rebuke, and Harry felt its full weight. The fallout was swift and merciless. International media pounced, with headlines that left no room for mercy. The Hindustan Times called it a royal message that missed the mark, while France's Le Figaro wrote, Prince Harry's speech was a masterclass in irrelevance. Satirical platforms had a field day. Australia's The Project quipped, Harry thought he was giving a TED Talk, but it turned into a dead talk, while Jimmy Kimmel in the US joked, Prince Harry went to China to save the world and ended up losing the room. Chinese netizens on Weibo turned Harry into a meme, comparing his speech to a sleep aid. Even traditionally sympathetic outlets like People magazine barely touched the story, a silence that spoke volumes. Harry's PR team tried to spin the narrative, issuing press releases about the importance of emotional literacy in leadership, but the footage of attendees walking out, the empty chairs, and the global backlash were too damning to bury. The Arkawell team reportedly went into crisis mode, with sources telling the Evening Standard they were considering pulling Harry from future international engagement altogether. This wasn't just a bad day for Harry, it was a public execution of his credibility. The Envision 2025 summit was supposed to be a rebranding moment, a chance to show the world he's a serious voice on global issues. Instead, it became a cautionary tale about what happens when fame meets a lack of focus. The world's leaders didn't want Harry's therapy, they wanted strategy, data, vision. He gave them platitudes and they walked away, literally. The image of those empty chairs, the sound of footsteps echoing as Harry spoke, and the global mockery that followed all point to a harsh reality. Prince Harry's influence is evaporating. Once a prince who could move mountains with his charisma, he's now a speaker who can't even keep a room seated in a world craving solutions. Harry offered sermons, and the result was a reputation hanging by a threaded thread that might just have snapped in Shanghai.